Hello students, welcome to Byju's IS. Welcome to a session on economy this week, wherein we'll be taking some of the very important articles that have appeared in various business related newspapers and we'll be analyzing these particular articles. For this particular video, I've chosen the time period from 11th to 15th January 2021 and the articles that I've chosen are from Business Line, Hindu, Business Standard, Indian Express, LiveMint and Financial Express. Let's begin the discussion. The first article is with respect to concept of inverted duty structure. First and foremost, what is this idea of an inverted duty structure? Let's have a look at it and then we'll look at the points which are given in the article. Now please understand, the concept of inverted duty structure basically refers to the tax rate when it is high on inputs and less on output. And what do you mean by this? Let me give a very simple example here. Imagine here is a producer. He is producing a particular good. And to produce this particular good, let's say ABC, he needs a raw material Y. When he purchases this particular raw material Y, let's say he has given a tax at the rate of 10%. Now he has produced the good. Now this particular good attracts a tax rate of 3%. Whenever such tax rate difference exists, that is specifically when on the output tax rate is lesser compared to the tax rate on the input, this particular concept is referred to as inverted duty structure. You can see this kind of an inverted duty structure in case of a customs. You can see it under the concept of a GST also. In case of customs, imagine you are importing a raw material X. This particular raw material attracts an import duty of let's say 20%. You are using it to manufacture a particular product and the product attracts a tax rate of let's say 10%. This is also a concept of a inverted duty structure only. And even in case of GST, imagine a raw material attracts a GST rate of 18% and the output attracts a GST rate of 12%. Even this is an example of an inverted duty structure. Now having understood the concept of inverted duty structure, what is the problem with this? Whenever there is an inverted duty structure like this, the problem is the value addition will not happen in the economy. For example, imagine I'm one of the manufacturer. I will manufacture a particular product by bringing in the raw material from the foreign market. So I've already paid a higher tax rate on this, that is the import duty I've paid is higher. So obviously my market prices will be higher. Compared to this, imagine the same product is imported and attracts a lesser rate of a tax. Now, this will basically lead to problem of lesser value addition in the economy. Not only this, even in case of a GST, when this particular situation exists, that is when the producer using a raw material which attracts a higher GST and produces a good which attracts a lesser GST rate, then basically he has to be provided with GST input to tax credit. So this becomes a revenue loss for Government of India. So these are certain issues which are arising because of the concept of an inverted duty structure which is even present in case of Indian economy. So Government of India in the last couple of years has taken various measures in order to address this particular problem of inverted duty structure. Having said so, this article basically says even now in the upcoming budget, government may take certain measures to address this particular problem of inverted duty structure. This inverted duty structure could be looked into not only on those particular imports which will have a higher tax rate compared to the output which is manufactured using these particular imports. Even if the imports have the same tax rate, that is the customs duty is the same as the tax rate on the output, even in these particular situations the inverted duty structure exists and government may simplify this. This is one situation. And second situation, there are certain imports which are used in different sectors or used to manufacture in different industries. In some scenarios, these imports might not lead to any kind of an inverted duty structure, but in certain situations, in certain uses, this could lead to inverted duty structure and Government of India might look into even this particular situation also. Let me give a very simple example to clarify the second scenario here. Whenever the plastic is used in manufacturing of electronics, the article says that there is no inverted duty structure here. when the same plastic, imported plastic, is used in plastic industry, then there is occurrence of inverted duty structure. So government of India might look into even this particular concept of inverted duty structure because of multiple uses of the same imports. So these are certain points related to the concept of an inverted duty structure. Based on this discussion, I have given a question here. Consider the following statements. The average tariff rate imposed by the government on imports has increased in recent years. Yes, this particular statement is true. I have taken this from Trade Policy Review, which was published very recently in the context of India. The taxpayers who face an inverted duty structure under GST will get input to tax credit. Even this particular statement is true. So both the statements are true. Right option is option C. Both are true. The next article is with respect to Pradhan Mantri Ujjwala Yojana. Very recently, there has been a parliamentary committee on petroleum which has asked for the continuation of this particular Pradhan Mantri Ujjwala Yojana. Now, what are the important points given in the article? First and foremost, this particular scheme was introduced in 2016. Initially, to begin with, they wanted to provide the subsidy for 5 crore households to get access to LPG connection. But later, this particular target was increased to 8 crore and this further has been increased to 9 crore now. As per this particular scheme, the households would be given a subsidy of 1,600 rupees from Government of India to get LPG connection. Third, the importance of the scheme comes in the background that in case of India, huge amount of deaths happen because of pollution, and one type of pollution is indoor pollution. As per this particular article, in case of India, air pollution is responsible for 120,000 children dying in their first month. And out of this particular 120,000, 2/3 of the deaths is because of usage of solid fuels. This is the first point. Second point, as per various experts, if you have an open fire kitchen, that is basically burning firewood in these particular households, let's say for cooking purposes, if there is an open fire kitchen, then it is as good as burning 400 cigarettes an hour. In order to address this particular situation, Government of India in 2016 introduced Pradhan Mantri Ujjwala Yojana. And as earlier mentioned, for 5 crore beneficiaries, Government of India wanted to provide subsidy. So 8,000 crore rupees was allocated. This was further increased by 4,800 crores with the expansion of the beneficiaries. And now to identify the beneficiaries, Government of India used 14 parameters. Now in addition to this, there is a mention of CAG report. The CAG report, which was published in 2019, has basically stated that the coverage of LPG has increased from 62% to 94% by March 2019. That's the first point. Second very important point. As per this particular CAG report, 7.2 crore connections have been distributed so far. However, there is also mention with respect to refilling of these particular cylinders. As per this particular article, the refilling of these particular cylinders was much higher in case of a non-PMUY beneficiary compared to PMUY beneficiary. The reason cited in this particular article is with respect to the financial position of these particular beneficiaries. So these are certain very important points related to Pradhan Mantri Ujjwala Yojana given in the article. At the fag end of the article, it basically mentions that the parliamentary committee has basically given a recommendation in order to continue with the implementation of this scheme. Although there has been no official confirmation that this particular scheme has been ended, the parliamentary committee stated that there should be a continuation of this particular scheme and we must be covering the urban and semi-urban slum areas in order to promote more and more LPG consumption or more and more LPG coverage. So these are certain points given with respect to PMEY in this particular article. The next article is with respect to disinvestment target. What are the points given in the article? Government of India for the current fiscal has set up a target of 2.1 trillion rupees under the disinvestment head. Out of this, so far, Government of India has been able to raise 13,844 crore rupees. This is one of the lowest revenues which have been generated by Government of India in terms of disinvestment revenues. This is lowest in terms of total revenue generated as well as the lowest in terms of a percentage of the targeted disinvestment revenues. Fourth very important point, in only 2 out of the last 12 years, the Government of India has been able to achieve the disinvestment target. Next, fifth very important target, in this particular financial year, that is between April to December, the total amount of the money raised in the market, that is basically by selling the shares in the market, the total amount of money raised in the market by all the companies in India comes at around 1.7 trillion rupees. And out of this, Government of India has been able to raise only around 13,844 crore rupees. This comes out to be around 8% of this particular number. And the average in the last 10 years of this particular proportion has been somewhere in the range of 49%. So in essence, it simply means the companies have been able to sell the shares in the market and raise a lot of money. On the other hand, the sale of shares of public sector enterprises which has generated money for Government of India has been very, very low. Not only this, the article also mentions that there has been certain diversion in terms of valuation of the shares of the public sector enterprises, that is CPSEs. In case of a valuation of the shares of the private sector companies, the valuation has been very, very high or very good. But in case of a public sector enterprises, there has been undervaluation. And this particular undervaluation has basically forced DIPAM, Department of Investment and Public Asset Management, to postpone the sales of the shares of various CPSEs. So based on these particular points, the article makes two very important arguments. On one side, some of the experts basically say it is unfair to evaluate the performance of Government of India during this kind of a pandemic. And on the other hand, the article also mentions that if there is so much of a diversion between valuation of the equity or the shares sold by the private companies and that of the public sector enterprises, then there is fundamentally something wrong with respect to the performance of the public sector enterprises. Or to be more precise, how these valuations are done in the market with respect to these particular public sector enterprises. The article says that one of the reasons for this particular lower valuation is because of over interference of Government of India in the functioning of these particular public sector enterprises. And even if these particular PSEs are sold at high discounts in the market, there could be very few buyers because they are concerned about the sustainability of these particular businesses. So these are certain very important points given with respect to disinvestment target in this particular article. Based on this discussion, I have given a question here. The term book value, often appearing in the newspaper in the context of public sector enterprises, refers to. Now this particular term book value, although I have not used in the discussion earlier, but very often this particular term book value is used in the context of valuation of these particular the public sector enterprises as well as private sector enterprises. Now what do you mean by the term book value? Please understand there are two terms here. One is the term book value and the second one is market value of a company. Now the concept of a book value basically refers to the value of a particular company as per the financial accounts of the company. Now what do you mean by this? Let me explain it. Imagine here's a company, it owns certain assets, it has issued certain shares and there are shareholders. And shareholders are nothing but owners of the company. So if these particular shareholders decide to sell off or liquidate this particular company in the market, sell off the asset, liquidate the company and pay off all the debts of the company. Right? Imagine they receive 100 crore rupees after liquidation and they pay off debts worth 50 crore rupees. So how much is the amount left here? 50 crore rupees. So this will be the book value of the company. And this particular book value will be distributed amongst the shareholders themselves. In essence, understand the concept here. Book value essentially means if a particular company is liquidated right now and all the debts are paid off, how much will be the money received by the shareholders, because the shareholders are the owners. That is the concept of a book value. On the other hand, market value of the company basically refers to the total market value of all the shares issued by this particular company. So these are the two terms very often used in the context of the CPSEs as well as the private sector companies in the newspaper. So please be very careful. So the term book value often appearing in the newspapers in the context of PSEs refers to the money that each of the shareholder would be receiving if the company is liquidated. Although I have not written, liquidated means and the debts are paid off. Right option is option C here. Next article is with respect to zero coupon bonds. Now, this article basically discusses certain concerns which have been raised by the central banker, that is RBI, with respect to the zero coupon bonds which have been issued by Government of India. Now, let's discuss certain very important points, then take up the article. First and foremost, what are zero coupon bonds? Now, understand the concept here. In case of a zero coupon bond, generally, underline the term generally, what happens is these particular bonds are issued at a discount and are redeemed at a face value. What do you mean by this? Let's take a very simple example. In case of a bond, if the face value is 100 rupees, if I am issuing this particular bond to you people at 100 rupees and if I guarantee 10% returns on this, so after 1 year, let's say, I will not only give you back the face value of 100, but I will also give you a return of 10 rupees. So you will receive how much? 110 rupees. So this is a concept wherein bond has been issued at a face value and redeemed at the amount. But in case of a zero coupon bond, what happens is, in case of a zero coupon bond, these are not issued at a face value, rather they are discounted. Means the face value is 100. I might sell the bond to you people at 90 rupees. So you have given me how much? 90 rupees. After 1 year, I will give back the face value to you. What is the face value of the bond? 100 rupees. So for you, the return of 10 rupees is earned. Right? This is a basic idea of a zero coupon bond. So in essence, coupon rate is zero, but that doesn't mean that you will not earn any interest. Generally, in case of a zero coupon bonds, these are issued at deep discounts and are redeemed at the face value. This is a basic idea of a zero coupon bonds. That's the first very important point here. Second very important point. Government, in order to provide capital to public sector banks, introduced the concept of recapitalization bonds. Under this particular concept of a recapitalization bonds, what government earlier used to do is issue bonds to public sector banks, collect money and use this particular money to provide capital to public sector banks. In essence, what will happen in case of PSBs is, now they are having a bond, let's say worth value 100 rupees. In addition to this, they will also have a 100 rupee infusion of capital from Government of India. And in return, PSBs would be providing equity to Government of India. So this was a basic practice of recapitalization bonds which are used by Government of India to infuse capital in the banking sector. Now this particular practice of issuing recapitalization bonds started in the year 2017 and 2018. And since these particular recapitalization bonds carried certain coupon rates or interest rates, the amount of interest which was paid by Government of India to the banking sector started increasing, and this started becoming a burden for Government of India. To address this particular issue, Government of India introduced a concept of a zero coupon bonds which they started issuing to the public sector banks. Very recently, this particular bonds worth 5,500 crores were issued in case of a Punjab and Sindh Bank. Now, what has been the issue here? Please understand, unlike the earlier zero coupon bonds, these particular zero coupon bonds which have been issued by Government of India have been issued at a par to the banks. And there is no interest which would be paid by government in case of these particular bonds. Not only this, these particular zero coupon bonds are non-tradable. These are not tradable. The banks will not be able to trade or sell these particular bonds in the market. So against this particular issue of Government of India issuing the zero coupon bonds to recapitalize the banking sector, RBI has raised a concern. The concern of RBI basically is with respect to present value of these particular bonds. Now what is this idea? The bank which has subscribed for these particular zero coupon bonds will be receiving face value, let's say of 100 rupees, just a hypothetical number, from Government of India, let's say after 10 years. So the bank will be receiving this particular 100 rupees, let's say after 10 years. In addition to this, Government of India, what does it do? Collect, let's say, amount from this particular bank by selling the bond and infuse the capital into the bank. So as per Government of India, it has infused the capital worth 100 rupees into the bank. But RBI basically says, since these particular bonds are valued in the future, that is basically the bank will be receiving this particular 100 rupees in the future, there is no guarantee with respect to how much is the actual infusion of the capital in the banking sector by Government of India. So there has been this particular concern which has been raised by RBI. Both the Government of Indian officials as well as RBI are working to address this particular issue. Another very important point mentioned in the article is, for this particular fiscal, Parliament has approved recapitalization worth 20,000 crore rupees. Of this, Government of India has basically issued recapitalization bonds worth 5,500 crore rupees. And so far, Government of India in the last 3 years has infused recapitalization of worth 2.5 trillion into the banking sector. So these are certain points with respect to zero coupon bonds given in this particular article. Now based on this discussion, I have given a question here. Consider the following statements regarding zero coupon bonds. Are issued only by the government? No, can be issued even by the companies also. These are issued at a discount and redeemed at a face value? Generally, yes. This particular statement is true. Hence, the option B is the right option here. The next article is with respect to performance of insolvency and bankruptcy code. So basically, the article mentions that number of cases which have gone into liquidation are much higher than those particular companies which have been revived, which have been sold off, or where there has been insolvency resolution under the IBC. Now, certain data which has been given in this particular article is this. IBC Insolvency and Bankruptcy Code has come into force in 2017, and after this, in every quarter, the number of cases which have gone for liquidation are 3 to 4 times higher than the number of cases where there has been the insolvency resolution, where the companies have been rescued. Basically, in case of liquidation, what happens is the company will be broken down into different components, the assets will be sold off, and the debts will be paid off. Rather than reviving, which is the major objective of insolvency and bankruptcy code, the company is getting liquidated. More and more companies are getting liquidated under the IBC. Third very important point. The highest number of liquidation orders of 155 were issued in the second quarter of financial year 20, and the same quarter there are only 33 orders issued for insolvency resolution. And in the second quarter of financial year 21, that is the current financial year, 68 companies have been ordered for liquidation, and only 22 businesses are basically being revived. So these are certain data given in this particular article. Now, why there is a very high number of insolvency resolution cases where there has been liquidation? The article mentions that this particular number could have been much higher if NCLT would not have extended the deadline of 330 days for insolvency resolution. That is basically, as per Government of India guidelines or regulations under IBC as of now, the insolvency resolution should be done within 330 days. But in many of the cases, this particular number has been breached because NCLT has kept on giving certain exemptions in certain cases where there is a possibility of finding a buyer for this particular company in the market. Next, the number of cases which are going for liquidation is very high because of one of the section of IBC, that is section 29A, which has been quoted in the article. As per section 29A, it basically says that those particular promoters whose companies are under insolvency and bankruptcy code, that is basically under insolvency resolution, will not be allowed to participate in the resolution process. These are barred from participating in the resolution process. Having said so, Government of India has given a caveat here. What is the caveat? If these particular promoters pay the outstanding dues, whatever is the outstanding amount, if they make this particular payment, then they will be allowed to participate in the resolution process and can bid for their own company. So apart from this, other reasons which are cited in the article for this higher number of liquidation cases are: 1, unviable business model; There is a doubt whether this particular business model will be viable if a purchaser comes forward in the market. And another very important reason is the number of buyers in the market are much lesser. So these are the three very important reasons which have been cited in the article as the reasons for higher number of liquidation of companies as against those particular companies where there have been revival in the market under the Insolvency and Bankruptcy Code. So these are certain points with respect to this particular article. The next article is with respect to rationalization in the customs tariffs. First and foremost, article mentions that with introduction of GST, large number of indirect taxes have been subsumed under the ambit of GST. So most of the indirect taxes are part of the GST, and any changes in the GST are to be done only by the GST Council. So apart from this, the customs which require more clarification, more rationalization, not much has been done by Government of India in the last couple of years. Second very important point. In case of India, large number of imports attract customs duties, and the customs duties or customs tariffs are in the range of 0% to 150%. Now, in addition to this, there are hundreds of relaxations, exemptions, listed items, etc. As a result of this, the whole customs tariff structure becomes very, very complicated. This is a third very important point. Next, fourth very important point. In many of the cases, the difference in the customs duties is in the range of 2.5%. So rather than having this kind of a difference of a small 2.5%, the customs duties need to be rationalized. And the article mentions that these rationalization should be done in the ranges of 150%, 100%, 50%, 25%, 15%, 10% and 5%. This will not only simplify the customs duties, it will also lead to collection of better revenues or higher revenues for Government of India because of the simplification. Fifth very important point. In the recent times, whatever changes have been introduced by Government of India, these have been done in order to either collect more and more revenues or to protect the domestic companies rather than focusing on rationalization of the structure. But the article says since either revenues are higher or it has been used to protect the domestic manufacturers under the ambit of Atmanirbhar Bharat, this particular issue is okay as long as Government of India now takes up the concept of rationalization of the customs tariffs. And another very important point discussed in this particular article, that is the sixth point, is the concept of inverted duty structure. Now in case of inverted duty structure, what is the concept there? Where the tax on the inputs is high compared to tax on the output. And the article mentions that various industry lobby groups have opposed this kind of a inverted duty structure in India because it reduces the scope for value addition in a domestic market. So Government of India on one side promotes a domestic manufacturing through Atmanirbhar Bharat, but on the other hand, because of inverted duty structure, there is a lesser incentive for value addition to be done in the domestic market. But this article discusses certain issues with this particular argument of inverted duty structure. And this particular concept of inverted duty structure is based on the concept that there is a clear distinction between what is an input and what is an output. This article mentions that there is no such clear distinction which cannot be made under the concept of a taxation. Because please understand this, what is an output for one industry could become an input for another industry. So for industry, there could be a clear distinction between what is an input and what is an output. But for economy as a whole, there cannot be a clear distinction. That has been argued in this particular article. So if you start making changes to these particular tax rates as per the request made by individual industry or individual factory owners like this, then the whole taxation structure will become messed up. So these are certain important points mentioned in this particular article. The next article is with respect to connection between fiscal deficit and inflation. Now what are the important points given in this particular article? Government of India, the current fiscal, had set up a target of 3.5% of fiscal deficit. But because of lower revenues, both under tax as well as a non-tax, and higher expenditures on the other hand, The overall fiscal deficit for Government of India is expected to be somewhere in the range of 7% for the current fiscal. Not only this, as a result of this particular higher fiscal deficit, Government of India is forced to borrow from the market. Now, this particular article discusses what is the impact of such a borrowing by Government of India in the market. First and foremost, please understand this. Government of India is one of the biggest borrowers in the domestic market. Now, in addition to being a bigger borrower in the market, generally, in the current financial year, Government of India is going to borrow much higher because of the pandemic related stress in the finances of the government. As a result of this, the overall cost of borrowing is expected to increase. Not only this, because Government of India is going to borrow more from the market, the interest rates in the market are expected to rise up. Now, how this is going to affect inflation in the domestic market? That is a connection you will have to make. This kind of a borrowing done by Government of India is said to be having an impact on inflation under the concept of a cost push inflation. What do you mean by this particular idea of a cost push inflation? Understand this. Whenever, let's say, the cost of production for manufacturer increases, what he generally does is he will transfer this particular higher cost of production in the form of a higher market prices. And whenever for a basket of commodities the market prices increases like this situation we refer to this as inflation. Now, how fiscal deficit is connected to inflation here? Please understand this. When Government of India borrows heavily from the market, interest rates will start rising upwards. And when interest rates starts rising upwards, these particular manufacturers, when they borrow from the market, they will have to shell out higher interest rates. They will have to pay higher interest rates for their borrowing. And this particular higher interest rate becomes part of the cost of the production. And when it becomes part of the cost of production, the manufacturer doesn't have any other option but to increase the market prices, which is expected to lead to higher inflation rates. And since this is happening from the supply side, that is, this inflation is taking place because of the supply side, this is referred as a cost push inflation. That is a basic connection between higher fiscal deficit as well as the inflation rate in case of Indian economy. Now, apart from this, another very important point discussed in this particular article is to what extent this will lead to inflation in the market. The article basically mentions that if this particular expenditure that is done by Government of India in case of productive assets, then one, it will basically create demand in the market, create employment in the market. It can help in reviving the sluggish economy. And on the other hand, if this kind of expenditure is done in, let's say, providing welfare to the people, then the purchasing power of people can be improved or increased. So these are certain points which are given in this particular article. The next article is with respect to loss-making public sector undertakings. Now, what are the points given in the article? First and foremost, right now Government of India has set up a policy wherein a time-bound closure of these particular loss-making PSUs is being followed. Basically, under this, Niti Aayog will be involved. That is, an oversight committee of Niti Aayog will be looking into these particular closure of loss-making PSUs. Now, the article basically says Government of India is looking into introducing a new methodology or a new set of guidelines which will look into closing of these particular loss-making PSUs, especially those particular PSUs where Government of India has tried out all the strategies. For example, the article mentions some of the companies where there has been failure to find new buyers in the market. That is, DIPAM, Department of Investment and Public Asset Management, has failed to find buyers for companies such as Scooters India Limited, Bharat Pumps and Compressors Limited, etc. In such cases where all the options have been used but the sale of these assets has not happened, in such cases a new methodology or a new norms of closures could be implemented. Third very important point, as per the data given in the article, as of 17th March 2020, 70 loss-making CPSEs have generated a loss of 31,635 crores for the government exchequer. And since 2013, that is basically between 2013 to 2020, the Government of India has approved closure of 21 loss-making CPSEs. In addition to this, the article also discusses why there is a loss incurred by these particular CPSEs. Some of the reasons which are mentioned in the article are: 1. Low capacity utilization, that is, they have a lot of capacity, that is, they can produce more, but because of various issues, they are unable to produce to their optimal capacity. Their production is much lesser than their optimal capacity. Second reason is resource crunch, that is raw material or whatever resources are required, these are not available in the optimal amount for them. Third one is higher interest burden. Fourth one is obsolete plants and machinery. Fifth one is surplus manpower. Sixth one is higher input cost, etc. So these are certain very important points mentioned in this particular article with respect to loss making PSUs. The next article is with respect to National Skill Mission. Certain important points mentioned in the article are: first, National Skill Mission was launched in 2015, and in the same year the first phase of this particular mission was launched. The second phase was launched in 2016 and it ran till 2020. Now Government of India has basically launched the third phase of National Skill Mission. Certain very important points with respect to this particular phase of NSM are: Government of India is aiming to skill 8 lakh people under this particular phase. It has allocated 950 crore rupees for skilling these many people. The skilling will be provided in 600 districts. The district administration will be involved in providing these particular skill sets. Fifth very important point, the district administration which is involved in the scheme will be playing a very important role in deciding what kind of a training demand is required here. The job matching will be done by the district administration. Quality monitoring, etc. will also be done by the district administration. So in essence, the article mentions that rather than having the concept of supply driven skilling which was followed earlier in the last 6 years under the National Skill Mission, now there will be demand driven skilling for these particular people under the National Skill Mission. So these are certain very important points with respect to the third phase of National Skill Mission which was launched by Government of India very recently. So these are certain very important articles as well as the questions related to these particular articles for this particular time period. Thank you. Have a good day.